Okay. Today we are going to look at the latest offering from Elegoo. This is the unboxing and first look of the Elegoo Saturn 4 Ultra. No disclosure needed, we have paid for this machine, so we can be as unbiased as possible. Opening the box, we are greeted with a lot of cardboard stock. Then we have a little, I think, empty box. Nope, it's not empty. There is something in here. Then we have the power cord for EU. We have a huge amount of air packing. This is really nice. This gives a great cushioning for the printer so it doesn't get wrecked in transport. Yeah! Then we find a user manual. On top there's also a thick piece of foam. And right over here we have the printer. It is weighing quite a lot, so it feels and it sounds like we have a metal undercarriage, just like the Saturn 3 Ultra. So this is a metal base, but there are quite a few things different with the 4 Ultra and the 3 Ultra. The 3 Ultra is still in the cave, but I think it's going to be replaced with this one. And there we have it, the first look of the Elegoo Saturn 4 Ultra. By the first looks, this is a very chunky printer. This is a lot bigger than the Saturn 3 Ultra, especially in the depth. So it looks like the printer is about, I think it's going to be about 5 centimeters deeper. Yeah, it's about 26 centimeters for the S3 Ultra. The S4 is about 8 centimeters deeper than the regular one. We can see a bunch of foam on the side. This is probably to keep the UV out from spilling on the sides, which is actually a quite nice feature. We don't get it on other printers like the Jupiter. I know it's a Jupiter, but still. So like we said, this is a metal undercarriage, and right here on the side we have our Wi-Fi antenna hookup, a USB, a switch, and then our power input. So the back of the printer looks to be very nice. We have a hookup for some extraction if you want it. And then the front of the printer has a nice feature that it lifts up just like that. Oh, the foam is in the way. Yeah, so just like that, which is going to be very useful if we want to do any removal of prints or if we have to do any maintenance. Massive piece of foam, another massive piece of foam with a box in it. So we are going to set this one aside. Then we have the build plate. We can see the same laser etching that we could see on the S3 Ultra, and this one is actually spring tensioned, which is really weird. And then we have our VAT, and it looks like the VAT is actually bigger than the regular S3 Ultra. But that is for a reason that, yeah, sadly enough, is not what we hoped for. It is not so we can put more resin in it. It is because this printer actually has a nice feature in it. Removing the VAT is still with these freaking bolts. But this time they actually have a use. It is not to just put it down so it doesn't lift up when you are printing. It is actually for something that we are going to look at it quite soon. So removing it, it is twisting out some bolts, and then we can see the LCD screen, which is actually right now tilted. So we can see right now that the display is not flush with the top of the system. We can see that it is tilted down. So this is going to be for the feature that the S4 Ultra is actually doing, a bit the same like we saw in the first Prusa MSLA printers. So this is going to be a peeling tank. We are going to peel the prints and we are not going to pull the prints. So I'm very interested to see if this is going to be yeah, way better than we could see with the just lifting up the build plate kind of things. Then we could also see an AI camera. Yeah, everything is AI these days, so I'm not getting my hopes on that this is actually going to do something useful, but we have a camera, so once we get out of the VAT with our print, we can actually see what we are printing. If you only print miniatures, I think the AI camera is going to be pretty useless. So the VAT mechanism is with a latch right over here, so let's install it. We can see that there is a protective film on it. Let's remove it, and then we can install it. It just slides in like that, and then you can clamp it down, and now it should be nice and sturdy, which is actually the fact. Yeah, this is nice and sturdy. Looking up close, we can see two beefy linear rails, but we can see that they switch out the mechanism to move up and down. We don't have ball screws anymore. I think this is just a regular lead screw. Now, I think the main reason they changed up is because they are pretty expensive, and now with the tilting VOD, we actually don't have to put a lot of power on the Z-axis to pull off the prints. So I think that is the reason why they have ditched the ball screws and they went for the regular, this. The top cover seems to be holding positions until that. So already this is pretty weird. So the first thing that I have noticed is that there are no lips to grab on the printer, so you will have to put your hands on here to lift it up. And if you are very lucky, you can put your nail under it to lift it up, but this is not very practical. I would have preferred to see a little lip right over here, so we can just use one finger to lift it up. Now you will have to use two fingers to get this thing open. It is pretty nice that this thing is tilting open, which means that you don't have to use a lot of space to get rid of the lid. With the S3 Ultra, we can see that even in my new print enclosure, it is pretty hard to removing it, and I think this is going to be really good if you are putting these things in any kind of an enclosure. Alright, so we are going to remove some of this packaging material. We are going to put in the build plate, and I think we are going to power it on for the first time. So step one, pretty easy. You need to remove this protective film. There is one on the bottom of this VOD. Then you will have to install that VOD into the system. Like this. Put in these screws. And then lastly, we are going to install this build plate like this. And the system is ready to be powered on. We also got a little booklet. It seems to be very nice. We get nice colorful images with nice English text, and they are guiding you to every step you need to do to install this machine. Very nice. Then of course our power line, which is going to be for Europe. Then we have quite a big box, which is very light. And in here we have something which is the first time I'm seeing this. This looks like it is going to be a drip tray. I have seen Uncle Jesse trying to print his own drip tray, and I think it's going to be to put it on here some way. Yeah, it's probably going to be like that. So if you want to remove your print and you're going to tilt your object, you are not dripping on the front of your printer. This is, yeah, my first thought is it looked weird, but I actually see the value of it. You're not dripping all over your printer. So yeah, I think this is actually not that bad. Then we have our toolkit. Right over here we have a power brick. It's a 24 volt 6 amp power brick, which we are going to need to power on this printer. I also ordered the optional heated thingy, but that heater seems to be not in the box. So or they forgot it or they still have to ship it. Also in the toolbox we can see we have our typical random gizmos. We got some filters, which is actually pretty nice. I really like that they include this thing. If you have failed prints or anything, or if you're just changing up resin, it is very nice to have some filters. We also have a nice Chitubox license. Not sure if it's for a year. I think now they have dropped that to about 6 months or so. So they really want you to buy the Chitubox Pro. In my opinion, the Chitubox Basic works just fine. You don't need the Pro. We have our antenna. Let's screw that thing in. Then we have a bag with some hex keys in it. We have some spare bolts, which is actually pretty nice. If you are servicing your printer and you strip a bolt or you lose one, it is actually pretty nice that they include it in the packaging. We also get some protection. We have our mouth masks and we have some gloves. These are probably latex, so if you are going to be allergic to latex, be very careful. And then these are what it looks like, carbon mouth masks. I think it's better that you ventilate instead of trying to cover up with something like this. We get our little stabby things. We have a plastic one, and then we have actually pretty sharp one, which is pretty nice. And we get our USB stick. All right, we have done everything. Now it's time to power it on for the first time and see what it is actually going to do. All right, so the thing is beeping at me. It's probably doing some checks. It is moving the VOD for the first time. Okay, that is done. And we can see that we have a nice screen right over here, but this time they have turned the LCD vertical. Probably a design decision. We are going to see if this is actually going to be annoying to use or not. I'm going to close the lid I'm going to shove the camera nice and close and we are going to look at the menus. We have the screen right over here. We can see the first thing is going to be temperature. Then we have print, tools, settings and device info. This is pretty much the same as the S3 Ultra. Only now we can see that we have a nice temperature indication. Pressing it doesn't do anything. We have a Wi-Fi indication right up here. It doesn't do anything. And in my opinion, the screen looks pretty dim. So maybe we can adjust it in the menu. So we are going to look at tools. We have LCD screen exposure, emergency stop, tank cleaning and manual. Those are pretty self-explanatory. We have device self-test and we have resin calibration. This is actually a pretty cool feature, which actually means that if you are going to put 4 things on the build plate that are going to be the same, you will be able to calibrate that resin using this function at different exposure levels, which means you can do 4 tests at the same time to see what your perfect exposure is. Then we have device self-test. We are going to let it run through. So we can see it is testing the status of the LCD, Z-axis motor, X-axis motor, then status of LED, light source, fan, LED temperature detection, and the mechanical sensor. Now, most of these are very vague, like mechanical sensor, what the hell is that? And LED temperature detection, what the hell is that? So yeah, we are not clear what this thing is actually doing, but we can see we have 2 motors. We have the Z-axis motor, which is going to be for the build plate, and then we have the X-axis motor, which is going to be for the tilting vat. Then let's go to the settings. We have language, we can scroll through and change the language. Then we have app settings, we have sounds we can disable, we have error logging, restore to factory, and then format the files, which is going to be handy. If you are going to upload remotely, you can format the files right over here. Then we have print mode. We can select high speed and low speed apparently. So high speed, low speed is probably going to be for default and how fast it is going to tilt. Then we have Wi-Fi. So let's try and search for some Wi-Fi devices. I'm going to connect to my Wi-Fi and I'll be right back. The first thing I can see, trying to put in your password is going to be pretty hard if you have fat fingers like me. Yeah, this is going to be challenging. So I'm going to try it and I will tell you if it was actually problematic or not. Well, that wasn't too bad. My fat fingers did the job. So we have connected to the Wi-Fi and the first thing we can see is that we get a prompt for a new version. So we are going to upgrade now. And right over here we can see this is an AI camera update. Not sure what it is going to update. We will see later if everything works like it's promised. It was asking us to power it down and now we are going to restart it and see if anything changed. It did a new calibration run and we can see that nothing really changed. The only thing I can see is that the temperature went up with 1 degree and that this thing seems to be all the same. The settings seems to be the same. I like the menus. It's pretty nice and simple. It doesn't have to be complicated for people to work on their own machine. I think this is just fine. We have seen the menus. We have seen that everything is working fine. The last thing we are going to do before making it all messy is going to open it up to see what the mechanism is for the tilting vat and yeah, if we can see any cost savings or anything like that. But my first thoughts seems to be very well built, very nice hard plastics. The bottom side is all metal. We can see this tilting thing. Yeah, I think the first look seems to be not that bad. So opening the back, we could also see that the stepper is actually glued in now. We can also see that all the other connections are glued in and that these steppers are not removable. Now let's try to see what's inside. One thing I already noticed, which is also a very cool detail. Right here we have a vent. This is to cool down the LED. This is a very nice design feature. And actually the whole thing oozes quality to me. I am not the biggest fan of Elegoo and their decisions, but this time I'm pretty amazed. Everything feels very nice and solid. This is looking to be a very nice product so far. So what I have found out is that the side panels and the under panel is all metal, but the front panel is plastic, probably because it is easier to manufacture. One thing you want to notice if you want to remove this plate is that you have to be very careful because there is a ribbon cable on the screen, and if you are going to pull it like a maniac, then you will rip it off and you will have to cry at Elegoo to replace it. So right here we have the meat and potatoes of the S4 Ultra, and the only reason you should consider it over the S3 Ultra. And it is going to be this massive stepper motor turning this wheel. This wheel is concentric and it will pull the vat down to peel it. So you will see that this thing is making an oscillating movement when the stepper is moving. Everything looks to be of a nice good quality metal. I don't see any reasons why these should break down. It is looking very high quality. And if you are looking at it from a proper angle, you can see they are using shielded bearings. They are using screws, bolts, everything you want. Also right over here, a shielded bearing. So even this looks to be of a very high quality. The actual reason why they are using a VOD tilting system like this one is so they can use the regular NFAP, which is the clear FEP that you can put on your vat. The previous one, the S3 Ultra, was with a frosted film we call ACF, and for the really die-hard miniature printers, you could see a very faint difference between printing with ACF and NFAP, which is what they call clarity. You get a little bit of a dulled down look with ACF, but if you are like me and you are just doing everything you can with this printer by printing huge stuff like this freaking hammer that was printed on the S3 Ultra, or you want to print miniatures like this one, I think a resin printer should be able to do both. I don't care if the printer is only meant for a miniature. We have all the build space, so I'm going to use it. Now, this is something we could see with the S3 Ultra was struggling with. We could see that on the hammer test that there was quite a lot of peel forces going on. We had Z-axis and we had the build plate that was a bit wobbly when we tried to print huge stuff like this. And some of you commented that that was not what the printer was meant for. Now, I highly disagree with it. I think that if you have the build volume, you should be able to print whatever you want. And that's where I think the S4 Ultra is coming in to try and eliminate those peel forces, so you can step back to your NFAP and you get back the 100% or almost 100% clarity of your LCD screen. Then we have the specs. The XY dimensions of the build plate are the same, but the Z axis is actually a bit shorter than the S3 Ultra. And it is probably going to be because we have the VOD that is tilting. Now, in my opinion, would it be that hard to just get this thing 1 or 2 centimeters higher so we have the same height of the S3 Ultra? In my opinion, depending on what you are going to print, this is a major mistake, and getting smaller is not what actually people want. And I think that most people only want bigger and bigger. Of course, if the space has room for it. So this time we are getting a smaller build volume, but we are getting some cool tech instead. So now I'm going to hook it up to a printer. We are going to open the software. We have this tainted panel right over here. So I'm pretty interested to see what the actual camera is going to do in this printer. One thing I also noticed is that every time we are going to boot up this printer, it's going to do a self-check. Now, I'm not sure about you, but I think this is a bit ridiculous, doing a check every time. But of course, this is going to prevent massive failures because something is broke before you are going to try and print it. Let me know down below what your opinion is about the self-check, doing it every time you reboot this printer. All right, so we are in Cheeto Basic and we can see they are on version v2.1. It looks actually pretty different from the version I'm used to printing on my other printers, so this is going to take a little bit of a used to. But we can choose our printer. We are going to select Elegoo and we are going to look if we can find the S4 Ultra. And yes, there it is. Let's select the S4 Ultra and we can see that our settings are actually all nice and represented right over here. So we can scroll down apparently. Then we have Resin Print, G-Code and Advanced. So this is also very different from what we are used to in the regular Cheeto box. But this is a first look of the printer and not of Cheeto box. What I want to do is I want to look at the freaking camera. How the hell do we do that? All right, so we finally have something to work with. We have installed Cheeto Basic v2.2 and then we have installed Cheeto Manager, and the Cheeto Manager is going to enable us to basically look remotely at our printer. So it is asking me to look for my printer, so we're going to do just that. We found it, we are going to add it. We have successfully added that printer, and right now I'm hoping we can actually freaking start to look at the camera. We have added the S4 Ultra, and right over here we have an overview of all the printers that are connected to G2 Manager, which is right now just this one. And we can do some video surveillance. And right now, hopefully we are going to see a snapshot. And yes, indeed, we see the snapshot of the camera. So right now, with the great lighting we have right here in the shed, it looks to be very good when we are going to open it up. And I already don't like the way we have to open up this thing. I'm going to probably drill 2 holes, make a bracket so we can just lift that freaking thing up. So we have opened it up and we can actually see that not a lot has changed if we open it up or not. So the auto exposure and brightness seems to be working just fine. We can also look in the device files and we can see locally there are actually no files available. So I think we have to go grab the USB stick and ram it in, which is actually pretty sad. We are having a printer with Wi-Fi capabilities and we can connect it to managers, and still we have to use that freaking USB to see what the hell we can do with this printer. Don't get me wrong, having USB is not bad if we are losing Wi-Fi, or you don't have Wi-Fi, or you don't want to use Wi-Fi. It's always great to have a backup, but at least I would expect some files to be already in the printer. It looks like we have a rook to test. Probably for the resin we are going to use, it's going to be fine. I'm heating up some resin to do a first test. Apparently we don't have to do any calibrations on the machine. Everything is auto calibrated, and the only thing that is auto is the spring mechanism and the build plate. So I think if we are going to have some uneven surfaces, the spring tension is going to auto level it, and it is going to level out the more we are going to get up in the print things, which is probably going to give you some issues if you are trying to print flat on the build surface. I know it is not proper to do it on the flat build surfaces. You always have to suspend it in supports, but I think if you have a little bit of a crooked build plate or a crooked VOD, the spring mechanism is going to ruin your accuracy of your print on the first layers. So probably not the best thing in this printer. So I have moved the S4 Ultra in this print farm. Like you can see, it is nicely lit. And for the people that watch the complete build, you can watch it, by the way, right over there. You can see there is something under the printers on top of the carpet to protect the carpet. Of course, I was going to do it, but you guys were very quick to mention that putting it on carpet was not right. Of course, if you're going to put things on carpet and you are going to mess it up, then your carpet is pretty much ruined. But with this nice sheet, all the resin spills should be captured. And if I'm finished, I'm actually able to put in the tray right over here. So this is actually pretty cool. If you are working on something that can't be dirty, or if you want to protect the printer, then this plastic thing right over here is going to come in really handy. Cleanup is going to be a bitch, but yeah, that's what you get. We have connected everything. We are going to fill it with some resin, and I'm going to do a print. The first thing I have noticed is that they have changed the location of the USB to the back. So in the regular S3 Ultra, everything was up front. Right now it's all on the back. So if you want to do something and you have a print farm just like me, everything is on the back, including the power off button. I would really prefer to have everything on the side, but yeah, this is what we get. Enough rambling, let's fill it up with resin and try to do a little test print. Also, you can see that opening and closing the door is really cool in this little enclosure we have built. But yeah, I'm going to keep with it, opening it with one finger. It is possible if you push up here or if you are using two hands, but I would have preferred if we had a little lip right over here. So for the testing, we are going to use a shit resin, the Anycubic Eco. It is going to be the best resin to test failures on because it is a weak resin. It is actually not good at anything, but yeah, just doing the absolute basic, which is printing miniatures. We have preheated it to 50 degrees in the Tech Q1 Pro just to get it a bit more viscous. And the first pour is going to get in. We are not going to fill it all the way up because that is not going to be necessary. All right, so I have managed to send a file to the printer and I want to do a calibration. Now, the manual is actually not doing a great job on how to do the resin calibration. So I'm going to push a button and right here we are going to get a little bit of an explainer. I'm going to read it real quick. Okay, so this is not making me any smarter. So we are using the Anycubic Eco. Everything above 2 seconds is going to work fine. What I have found out is we cannot set anything right here, but we have a plus. So I'm going to use the plus. Go to local files, and there we have it, the cones of calibration. We are going to import it. All right, and now it's giving me values. We have values from 1.8 seconds all the way to 2.8 seconds, which is a bit much. So I'm going to lower that to 2.6. Then we are going to lower that by the same amount. And we have 1.8. I'm going to leave it as it's set right now. So hopefully this is actually going to do the calibration as I wanted. I'm going to open up the lid so you can see what is happening for this video. We have the ventilation up and running, and I'm going to press the play button. So it's confirming me that we are using the cones of calibration, and I'm going to press print. The printing will involve partitioned exposure time testing on the model, and the parameters cannot be changed during printing. Please confirm. I'm going to confirm it. So the machine actually is pretty quiet. The Z-axis moves up pretty smooth. The tilting mechanism, from what I have heard, just doing the calibration, the tilting mechanism is actually louder. And I think the machine has started doing something. And there we have it, our first peel. It was actually pretty noisy. We had some creaking noises coming from, I think it's going to be the spring mechanism of the bed. We can also see that the temperature is 38 degrees Celsius, so the resin was nice and hot when we poured it in. And now we are having some kind of a weight menu where we can still see the temperature. Yeah, it sounds like the whole tilting mechanism is going to crack on my machine. Pretty annoying, but I think if we are going to close the lid, it is not going to be that bad. All right, the print is finished. Let's look what we have. All right, the first thing I noticed is that the build plate doesn't go all the way up, but looking at what we have, we actually see something different from other things. So I think the calibration did work. So we still have our settings right over here: 2.6, 2.3, 2.1 and 1.8. So let's remove the build plate and have a look, shall we? But first, let's test this little tray right over here. And like you can see, I would already made a huge mess. There are drippings all over the place. So yeah, I think that the drip tray actually is quite a nice feature. Okay, so I just said I loved the drip tray, and that is true. But why the hell, Elegoo? Why the hell are you embossing your logo in it? This is just awful to clean out. I mean, why? Look, this is never coming out, so yeah. I know branding and all, but why? And it looks like every print actually made it. And as you can see, we actually have a difference in exposure. We have a difference in failing. And looking at the other side, we can see that one of them failed. This one didn't connect. So the lowest one we have tested did fail. So we have to pick the second lowest number that we have tested, which was probably around 2.1, I think. Calibrating your resin right now on the S4 Ultra is actually mind-blowingly easy. We had 4 tests and we could actually see that around 2, in this case 2.1, seems to be on the money. All right, I'm going to clean all this crap up and going to reinstall everything, and then we are going to get a nice full print in that machine. And these days I'm quite a fan of Alien versus Predator, so I'm going to look if I can find something from Predator. I have bought a design from Wicked 3D from Predator. It looks absolutely amazing, so I'm going to keep it as a surprise, the design. I'm going to upload it to the printer, and then we will see what we end up with. Massive amounts of overhangs, we have massive amounts of peeling, so this is going to be an absolutely great test to see if the system is actually doing anything good. Also, one of the things that I have seen is there is no actual lighting or LEDs in the printer. We have a camera, it is a pretty dark environment, and we don't have any LEDs. Now, if we look at the G2 Manager, we can see that the clarity is not that bad, but still, if we are going to print in a pretty dark environment, yeah, I don't know. I think it would be better if there were some LEDs in the printer. But okay, we are going to start the print and I will get back to you very soon. And there we have it, our first look of the Elegoo Saturn 4 Ultra. And about the video footage, I was going to show you some footage, but I actually completely screwed up. The video is gone and there is no way to retrieve it because I rebooted the system. I had some trouble connecting to Wi-Fi. It's because of the mesh. It started meshing with the one in the house, so I had to restart it, and yeah, I completely screwed up. But here's some footage from another YouTuber, and I think it's going to be the same as this one. There is no lighting behind the camera, so the object is going to be filmed really dark. There should be, I think it's really a design flaw. If you're going to put a camera in that corner, at least give something a bit of light to see what the hell you are doing. Right now, you can obviously remotely log in the software and look at it, but yeah, who is going to sit around and look at the object? Most of the time people are going to start the sprint and then they just run off and do some actual work, I guess. So that's hopeless. Then I talked about the cracking noise you got from this printer in the first layers, and that was actually the self-leveling feature of the build plate. So the build plate on the corners where the bolts are in the mechanism is spring loaded. I have showed you that in the beginning. And the build plate is actually not really good aligned with the screen, and that is the cracking sound you could hear. You could actually see the bolts move when the build plate was dropping into the resin and then compensating on the perfect layer height before it was exposing. So in the first, I would say 20 or 30 layers, the build plate is going to level the unevenness of the build plate, and after that you get at the point that the build plate is not moving anymore, and the only thing you are going to hear is going to be the peel action. So before I printed, I was already having my doubts about the spring mechanism of the build plate. So this actually means that if you are going to print something flat on the build plate without supporting it mid-air, you are going to have some accuracy problems. I'm going to test that for the review, but if the build plate is getting tilted by the springs because of the unevenness, I'm pretty sure your dimensional accuracy is going to suffer from it. Now, for most people, this printer is going to be for non-functional parts, and we are going to print minis. And if you're going to print any Buster minis like this one, you actually are going to suspend it 5mm off the build plate, and by then the build plate has completely leveled out. And I think that is not going to be a problem. I'm not sure if this is the best way, but I think only more printing is going to get a clear answer of that. What was actually also really cool to see is that the tilting action of the vat is dynamic, I could say. So if you have your bottom exposures and then you have some transition lines, the speed of the build plate tilting mechanism is also dynamically speeding up, I could say. So it's really slow in the beginning, and then when you get at your final exposure time, then it is super fast. And I think that even putting in some crazy speeds in normal lifting resin printers, that this is going to be very close or better than regular systems. Now, I did an actual test print right here of the Predator. This is the Predator inspired by Prey. It is designed by Wicked 3D. I just downloaded it yesterday, and it is actually a really cool model. But we can see the stresses of the FEP knock some things loose, and we can also see that some supports are really hard to remove. So we definitely have to do some finer tuning of the supports. I think the supports were, even on the light settings, are too thick and really hard to remove, and we broke off some pieces that are luckily gluable. Now the cool thing is this little face mask. You can just pull it off. So this is actually a really cool model. Everything is intact, and we printed it with this shitty resin. So this is the model up close, and we can see that this part is actually loose. It almost broke off, so it's barely hanging on. You can also see right over here, supports were very hard to remove, but this is a support issue. This is not an issue with the printer. And right over here, this is very cool. We can see these are leaves. These are super fine details. I actually love how this model came out. On the bigger model, we also lost some skulls, but the actual detail on these little figurines are just absolutely amazing. So the Prey model also has a face mask that is removable, and the actual details on the underside are just absolutely mind-blowing. I have to say, my hat's off to Wicked. This is an absolutely amazing model to print out. And then we have the Predator itself. We can see there are some long hairs right over here and here. Those are super fine details, and even with this shit resin, we can see that their hairs are intact. We have his little swords dangling right over here. This is a super cool model, and you can see that right over here we broke off the skulls, but it could also be that the contact area of the skulls and the model is super fine, but a little bit of glue is going to fix just that. And then at the back we can also see, this is super interesting, we have a lot of hair dangling right over here that was supported. It was really hard to remove the supports from it, but the model actually came out super great. We can see that the sword of the Predator that is hanging on right here is super detailed. We have the little backpack right over here. We have this little thing right over here. Everything is just printed amazingly on the Saturn 4 Ultra. So as you can see, the Saturn 4 Ultra did a great job on this model. This was a very hard model to print, and even with the shittiest resins I have ever tested, we printed out a good model. So this was not a review, this was just a first look of the Saturn 4 Ultra, and comparing it with his older brother, the S3 Ultra, I think this is definitely a good upgrade. Also, a very cool thing to see is that we don't get stresses on this model. I don't see any layer peeling going on in this model. So yeah, I think the peeling mechanism of the S4 Ultra is absolutely doing a great job. Now we also are going to try and print some functional stuff to see if it also holds up on the S4 Ultra. If you have any comments or suggestions about the S4 Ultra, leave them down below. And then I would like to end up with this. We almost have 5,000 subscribers, and I would like to see the 10,000 mark. If you like my videos in any way, then please consider subscribing to the channel. It helps me out big time. And then lastly, I want to thank all the members of the channel. You guys are the best. So that's going to be it. Review in a few months, and I see you in the next one.